A monster can refer to individuals who commit heinous acts embodying traits that society deems monstrous, cruelty, malice, or a complete disregard for humanity. In the shadows of a tranquil college campus, a nightmare unfolded that would haunt countless lives. Ted Bundy, a notorious serial killer cloaked in charm and deceit, prowled for his next victim, leaving a trail of terror and devastation. Among those who faced his brutality was Kleiner Rubin, a young woman whose fight for survival became a testament of survival. As she battled for her life that fateful night in 1978, she not only confronted the depths of human evil, but also emerged as a symbol of strength and hope. Her chilling story, intertwined with Bundy's legacy, serves as a powerful reminder of the malice that can lurk in the darkness. Join us as we dive into the shadows of a monster and the resilience of a survivor on this episode. Tune in to Gold Shields.
Gold Shields brings true stories from law enforcement, the military, true crime authors, and first responders. Experience the dedication, danger, and emotional toll with the heroes themselves. These gripping tales of true crimes, true stories, and true heroes are all here on Gold Shields. Hey everybody, welcome back to another great episode of Gold Shields. I'm your host, Tom Smith, and Dan, my partner, isn't here, as you can tell. He's in a undisclosed location that's top secret we can't talk about. So he left me the reins, and the show's got to go on. You know, we have these shows booked, and nothing gets in the way of getting Gold Shields out there and the stories that are important to us, and this is no different. As I stated on the last show, this is going to be part 2 of a 2-part series on Ted Bundy. And this guest today is so important to us and close to us, and we're really thrilled to have her on. But first, we get some housekeeping things out of the way. Our premier sponsor, Streamlight, streamlight.com. Make sure you go to them. They're supplying flashlights to the military, to law enforcement, to make sure they get through really tough situations and dangerous situations at night, car stops, alleyways, abandoned buildings and all that. So make sure you go to streamlight.com. Another really important part of our show is Copline. Everyone out there knows someone who needs help in law enforcement, needs to talk to someone, whether they're having a bad day or something that's lingering that they need to talk to someone. 1-800-COPLINE, 1-800-267-5463, or copline.org. Pass that on to whoever needs to talk to someone. Very, very important to us. Anyone who knows our show knows how much the mental health aspect of law enforcement is to Dan and I. So don't forget that. 1-800-COPLINE. And finally, a new part of our show, 221B Tactical. You saw our Instagram live show with Suresh, who's the owner, last week. Incredible website, company, providing state-of-the-art equipment for law enforcement to make their job a little easier as much as they can. Make sure you go to 221btactical.com. So now we got all that out of the way. We're going to get to what's important in the show. And a lot of times when we do these shows, our guests are very important to us, but none like Kleiner Rubin, who is a survivor. And not even just a survivor of one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy. And she is here on Gold Shields to tell this incredible story of survival, determination, and just a willingness to live and go on and to pass that on to other survivors. So, Kathy, thank you so much for joining us on Gold Shields. It is an absolute honor.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to talk to you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. I know you do a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of things like that. We met down at CrimeCon a couple of years ago, and you were a no-brainer to get on the show. So we're really thrilled. Why don't you take us through kind of, before we get to everything that happened with the Ted Bundy situation, take us through a little bit of Kathy, growing up in early days and all that.
I was born in Miami, But we moved north to Fort Lauderdale when I was younger. At around the age of 13, which was sixth grade of elementary school, I became ill. I was always running a fever and just so tired I couldn't stay up. And during recess, I'd sit by the teacher. I'd come home and go to bed. And my parents knew this wasn't right. So they took me to my pediatrician, who said she needs to go to the hospital today. We're not sure what's wrong with her, but she's sick. So I went to the hospital the next day and ended up staying there for 3 months. And they tested me, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. They knew that I was dying. My organs were failing, but they couldn't decide what it was. So after the end of 3 months, they told my mother and father to take me home and make me comfortable because they didn't know how long I'd have to live. But before that, and I went home, a doctor came to my parents and said that she had some experimental chemo that she wanted to give me. And my parents said, sure, anything. So I went and I had chemo. It was a Cuban doctor, and went to Miami, had chemo. And the first chemo was horrible, terrible. I laid on the bed in her office and took my session. The next session I took, and my hairs began to fall out. So by the third or fourth session, I was completely bald, and I was staying at home. I couldn't go out. No one could come in. I was housebound from the whole seventh grade. I was alone. I would look out my window and see the kids play, and I'd get so lonely. Sometimes I would pick up the phone and dial 0 for the operator. And she would talk to me sometimes and sometimes not. But it was survival. It was like, someone talk to me, please. So the end of my seventh grade, I ended up going out to church one day, and I came home and had the shingles. So now I have no hair and shingles all over my neck and face. But, next year was going to be eighth grade, and I was looking forward to it because this was just something I was dealing with at that age. I just thought it was normal to go through this. So by the eighth grade, I went back to school, and no one knew me because, kids forget easy. You're not out playing with them, and they forget who you are. So by the time I got to high school, I was just enjoying life. I could not go out and play PE, but I did go and join the drama department. And I ended up spending 4 years with some of the greatest kids I ever knew. And actually, one of them turned out to be my husband. But that was many years later.
You know what, everybody? Just so everyone understands, there's a reason I asked Kathy that question about growing up. And there's a reason that we wanted to get what she had to deal with as a kid, because it leads to the fight for life and survival. And then that's why we wanted to do that. And it all leads to a spot we're going to get to of what Kathy is all about and what she's made up of. The heroic bones in her body started, like she just said, when she was younger. So Kathy, you get through high school, and now it's time for college.
Yes. I was looking at all the colleges, and I was looking in the state of Florida, and I looked on the map, and I saw that Tallahassee was as far away from Miami, where my parents lived, as I could get and still pay in-state tuition. So that was my big FSU. I'd have to go there. So I did end up going to FSU with some friends of mine from drama, and we had a great time. My freshman year was full of fun and just learning how to be an adult and being out there. My first month of being a freshman, I ended up pledging a sorority house. I went through Rush, which is when girls look at sororities and they look at the girls and they decide who they may want to join and become a sister. And I pledged Chi Omega. And it was great. Now I had friends in the dormitories and friends at Chi O, and I was always over there, and it was good. It was a great time for me.
That's a great experience. I know many people who've done it. And you know what? It's a strength building thing. It's camaraderie. It's friends forever. friends you'll always have. Uh, and then I think you move into the sorority house your sophomore year, correct?
Yes, at the beginning of sophomore, I moved in, and I had, there were a lot of women there were 40 women that lived in the sorority house at that time. I moved in and I met my roommate, and it was great. We had like a plain palette of things to do with our bedroom. So I remember at Christmas time, I went shopping and looked at bedspreads everywhere. Mom says, "This is a good one." I'm like, "No, this is enough." And I finally found one. It was white with big brown trees on it and green leaves, and it was very happy. And that was my bedspread. So that takes us through December of 2000, of December 1977.
And then, like we're going to get into, on January 14th, 1978, your entire world changes. Your life changes. Everything about you changes. And you're thrust into the middle of this wild world that's going on with Ted Bundy. So as you can, the best you can, let's go through that day.
Okay. Saturday, January 14th. It was cold out, and I was going to a wedding that day. So I put on my heavy corduroy pants and my blue and white sweater, and I was going out to the wedding. It was a fun day, and I was in the sorority house, and everyone was, the women were waking up and, saying what they did the night before. And the night before, on that Friday, I had been out to frat party. So on Saturday morning, I didn't want to get up, but I forced myself to. And I went to the wedding, and the bride was a nurse training, and the groom was an engineer, and they both went to Florida State. So at the middle of the day, we had the reception, and then we went to a friend's house afterwards to have a potluck dinner for Saturday night. And I was there, and it was getting colder and colder, and I knew I had a test on Monday for calculus. And I was thinking, well, maybe if I go home and study a little bit, it would be a good idea. I should at least open the book and see what it's about. So around 11 o'clock that night, Saturday night, I went home and went into our room and sat down on our bed and began to study. Our bedroom, my roommate and I lived on the second floor of the Chi Omega house. Our room faced the back of the parking lot in the very back. So our windows, we had a bank of windows that were always open in our room because we hung plants on the curtain rods. So it was beautiful, sunny room all the time. And when we walked into our room, it was about the size of a dormitory. We had twin beds on each side. We had a dresser and a desk, and it was perfect. It was the perfect room. So I got home, started studying, and around 12:30 decided to go to sleep. And so my roommate was studying also, and she fell asleep. So it was about late in the morning, maybe around 11. Maybe about 1 or 2, I started stirring. And when you opened our bedroom door, the carpet swished against the bottom of the door, and it made a noise. But I was sound asleep. I didn't know that someone had followed some girls home, some sorority sisters, from a bar that wasn't too far from the house. And he followed them to the back of the sorority house. And he noticed that the back door didn't lock when they went in. He looked around and picked up a piece of firewood that was right there on the stairs, walked into the sorority house, carrying his log, and walked through the sorority house. No one saw him, no one was around, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. He went up the stairs to the back of the house and took a right, and that was where the hallway was with my bedroom. The first room he came to was Margaret Bowman's room. Margaret was a beautiful young lady. She was just happy all the time and just was always there. If a pledge needed to help or needed to ask questions, she was always there to talk to us. He killed her. He went into her room and he strangled her until she died. When he left her room, he put the sheets up next to her chin so Margaret looked like she was sleeping. He went across the hall and checked the doorknob, and it was open. And this room was Lisa Levy's room. And Lisa was very athletic, very fun, just a talker. And we sat many times in her room doing our nails on the floor, just having a great time. He went to her room and he attacked. He attacked her with bottles, with a spray bottle. He bit her nipple and her butt so hard that it left impressions on it, which end up being like a fingerprint. So after he attacked Lisa, he left her for dead. She was still alive, but he left her there dying. He left Lisa's room, walked down the hall, went to the next side of the room, and that was my room, room number 8. Our door was unlocked. I didn't always think about it, but I just thought we should lock our doors at night. And, the girls said, "What, are you afraid of your sorority sisters?" So I left the door open that night. I heard a swish when the carpet opened against the door on the carpet. And in our room, between our twin beds, we had a small foot locker, which was like just a locker. We put books in it and maybe a blanket, and that was between our 2 beds. This person walked into the room, and it was dark. It was very dark out, and he stumbled and tripped over this foot locker we had. I awoke when I heard the door opening a little bit. I just kind of heard it. Then when I heard this thud, when this person tripped over that foot locker, I opened my eyes and I tried to see, and I looked, and all I could see was a silhouette of someone standing over me. It was dark. He was tall. I was laying in my bed, and I looked up, and he raised his arm up over his head, and he was holding that piece of wood, that oak log he had picked up, and he slammed it down so hard on my face that it shattered the bones in my face. My jaw was broken in 3 places. I bit my cheek almost open. It was slithered open. I almost bit my tongue off. I had lacerations all over my face. And while he's attacking me, he didn't say anything. He didn't say a word. It was just it was weird. But at that point, I think I was so scared that I went unconscious. I passed out. But my roommate had heard the same noise. So she started to stir in her bed. He went across and attacked her with the same piece of oak log that he had killed with, and he attacked me with. He attacked her, and now I'm in my bed, and I made myself into the smallest little ball, and I hid because I thought, if he can't see me, he won't kill me. And I lay there all scrunched up, and he did come over to my side of the bed again. And I was trying not to look, but I opened my eyes, and again, I saw just the silhouette of someone standing next to me. And then, just at that time, a bright light shone into our bedroom, a light that filled the room up with light, and it was pure, and it was just beautiful. And that light came from a car that was bringing home a sorority sister at 3:00 in the morning. And he was in the parking lot that our back windows faced. So he came in, he dropped her off, the lights were in my room, and then he turned to leave, and my room got dark again. And I was afraid, and I was curled up in a ball, and I just knew this was it. He was going to attack me. He was going to kill me. But he didn't. He was moving around. He was like antsy and just didn't know what to do, because he didn't know if he was seen by the car coming in that night, or if I got a better focus on him while I was laying there. So he turned around. He went out the door. He ran down the stairway, out into the street, and left the sorority house. And I'm in my bed, and I'm yelling and making all these strong noises as I could. But all I was doing was making gurgling sounds because my face was open and the blood in my mouth was just gurgling. And the blood tastes kind of like a nickel if you were to suck on it. It was a metallic taste. And I could feel my jaw, and it was warm and sticky. And I laid there and I was screaming, but no sounds were coming out from me. After he attacked my roommate, she was alive. After he left, she got up and went out in the hallway to look for help. The sorority sisters did find her, and they walked her back into the room. They turned on the light, and that's when they saw the carnage, the blood on the walls, on the floor. I'm laying there. I have pieces of wood sticking out of my face, and I'm rocking back and forth, just asking for help. And she was hurt too. She had her face and her jaw broken. So now the girls they're starting to come in as they hear the commotion. And it was terrible. And the next thing I remember is I passed out again.
In the darkest of nights, you need a light you can trust. That's why we rely on Streamlight. Whether you're investigating a scene, navigating through uncharted territory, or just need a dependable flashlight for those unexpected moments, Streamlight is your go-to source. With over 45 years of innovation, Streamlight crafts rugged, high-performance flashlights that can withstand the toughest conditions. From tactical torches for law enforcement to everyday carry lights, Streamlight has you covered. Join the Streamlight community today and see why professionals trust Streamlight for their lighting needs. Visit streamlight.com to find your perfect light. Streamlight, lighting your way through the shadows.
Introducing 221B Tactical, where innovation meets safety. Founded by a veteran police officer, 221B Tactical creates cutting-edge gear designed to keep you protected and comfortable in the toughest conditions. From the revolutionary MaxDree vest that keeps body armor users cool and dry, to high-performance gloves and tactical apparel, every product is field-tested by professionals on the front lines. Eliminate the impossible with 221B Tactical, where gear isn't just built, it's built to protect. Visit 221btactical.com and gear up today.
You know, we hear stories. This is what you do when you do these type of shows. You know, you hear stories like this, but this one's different because of who it involves and the historical nature of it. And, you know, hearing your detail, your memory about it is extraordinary, and it's chilling. I mean, you know, just to hear it for the first time out of your mouth is chilling. And that's what I said, everyone. You know, the beginning of the show, there was a reason for how you grew up, leading to having to be strong even on a different level in a different way, and surviving that. So now at the scene, I'm sure the police come, ambulances come,
Yes.
and now there's the realization of what happened to your other two sorority sisters come out now.
Well, first, after I came to, right after the attack, the first person I saw standing next to me was a police officer. And he was there, and he was talking to me. He squatted down so he'd be next to my face. And he said, "It's okay. I'm going to take care of you." And then the paramedics came, and they tended to me the best they could. And they were going to take me out to the ambulance, and they put me on the stretcher, and they carried me down the big wood staircase that was in front of the house. And as they turned and took me outside, it was freezing. It was misty out, and it was cold. But I saw the lights from the fire truck and the ambulance and the police cars, red lights, yellow lights, blue lights, and they were swirling. And I could hear the police officers' walkie-talkies and the ambulance talking. And for a moment, I thought I was at a carnival because of all the lights and everything going on. My mind went somewhere where I was okay. I was going to be okay. And I looked around, and there was that police officer still standing next to me. And he walked me down, and they put me into the ambulance. And again, I passed out until I got to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, it was scary. I was scared now. I was hurting horribly. And it was a swirl of emotions of what's going on, not knowing what's going on. And in an operating, in the ER, you know how it's just nonstop. And I was in the laying on the gurney, and I was actually in the middle of the room. I hadn't gone into a little cubby yet with a separate curtain, and they were working on me. And I looked, and there was my police officer. He was still by me, and it made me feel so good just to know that no matter what, he was going to take care of me, and this person wasn't going to hit me again. So they took care of me as best they could. My jaw was broken in 3 places, and they had to wire it shut. So they took me to the OR, and they wired my mouth shut and did the best they could for me. And then I went into my own room after ICU and was in my room in the hospital. And it was weird because I was by myself, and my mom and dad had come up to visit, to see me. And I looked, and my door was closed. But in the hallway was a police officer. They did not know who did this to me, but they were going to be sure that no one came into my room and hurt me. And that was the theme through it all of having a police officer with me. You know, a police officer is going to take care of you. You know, if you have a problem, you go to a police officer, and this just embedded it into me that they were there to help me. And after a couple of nights and days in the hospital, it was time for me to go home. And it was hard in the hospital. I hurt so bad. My face was so bandaged. But I looked myself in the mirror, and I had to see myself. And it was a scary, sad look that I saw. When it was time to go home, I was going to be taken to the airport. Mama and I and Daddy were going to be flown down to South Florida. And this was a plane, not a big plane, but a smaller plane in Tallahassee. Before they took me to the airport, the police officers, there was 2 black cars, took me in front of the sorority house. They wanted me to go in and see if I could tell if anything was missing from the sorority, my dresser. So I'm there, and I'm not wanting to do it, but one officer took each elbow and walked me up the stairs, little bitty stairs, step by step. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I looked down my hallway, and I saw yellow crime scene tape across the window of a door where Margaret lived. And then I looked to the other side. I glanced over, and I saw the yellow crime scene tape where Lisa lived. And I didn't have any questions. I just made no sense. And then I walked down another door to my room where the yellow crime scene tape was. And they moved it aside, and I walked in. And I walked into our room. And there were people in there, police officers and technicians. And I looked, they said, "Do you see anything missing?" So I looked to my left, and right there was my dresser. I don't remember what was on it to say if anything was missing, but it was covered with black finger dust tape. So then I looked, and there was my dresser, and again, it had the dust, fingerprint dust on it. And then I looked, and I saw my bed. And my bed was torn up. The sheets and my beautiful bedspread were in a ball at the foot of the bed, and they were all brown from the blood stains that had dried. And my mattress was covered in blood, and the wall was splattered with blood. So when he hit me and lifted the log up, it splattered on the wall. I said I couldn't see anything that I knew of, but I actually was glad I got to go. And I'm glad I got to see the room and my bed, that this is what happened. This is where it happened. I don't have to try to think of what happened. I don't have to make up what happened because I knew. And this gave me some peace. It really did. So then we left the sorority house. And I walked to the car and they flew us down to Miami.
You know what? I've been involved in crime scenes and this and that, and it's not easy. It's very hard. Not to mention bringing a victim back to it. You know, we've also done that. That is extremely difficult because as a detective, you don't know how you're going to react. You don't know what's going to happen, what your feelings are going to be, or any victim coming back and listening to you be as strong and keep it together as you were. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know them. I've never met them, but those cops probably had a sigh of relief, like, okay, wow, this is okay. This is one strong girl. And, you know, everyone has to understand something. You're what, 19, 20 years old. I mean, that in and of itself, with going through everything you did, and I broke my jaw in a car accident. And let me tell you, everyone out there maybe listening that you went through it too, that is extremely painful, not to mention in 3 places, not to mention wired shut. So I somewhat understand the pain. It is not fun. And then for you to pull yourself together and do this is incredible. God, what a testament to your strength. So now you're done at the crime scene. You go home to Miami with your mom and dad.
Yes.
Now, right after that, how does the rest of the case start developing with you? With regards to him ID'd, the arrest, all that. Take us through that.
When I was in the hospital, the detectives tried to get me to say what happened, and I didn't know. I couldn't obviously describe him because he had on black, and I couldn't see without my glasses. So it was, I couldn't help them at all. But they did keep calling during the time to see if I had any more things I could help them with. When we got to Miami, my parents' house, we got there and there was a police officer outside my door because they still didn't know who this was who had attacked me, and they were, giving us security. So I didn't find out that Margaret and Lisa got attacked until a couple weeks after it happened. My parents were trying to shield me from any more trauma or exposure. But since not knowing who did this, it was scary, I think, for mom and dad, but grateful that we had someone out there in front. And I remember in the morning, Mama would make sticky buns and take a cup of coffee out to the car. And then in the afternoon, she'd make cookies and lemonade. She was having a good time knowing they were there and appreciating them. So
there's not one cop around that's going to turn all that down. That's for darn sure. That's for sure.
She didn't feel like she could do anything. She was helpless, but this she could do.
That's a friend forever.
Yes. So I was home recuperating, and my mouth was wired shut for 9 weeks because it had to be rebroken when I got down to Miami because it wasn't set right in Tallahassee. So it was a 9-week process of sucking through a straw and getting whatever you could get. So that was hurtful and not very fun.
Well, let me tell you, the only thing, when I broke my jaw, the only thing I could eat was Chinese food.
Oh.
It's the only thing that fit in my mouth. I'd like push it in.
Wish you
did. Like rice and, just like kind of push it into one side that was open.
Yeah.
And that was all I could do. And you see today we didn't have protein drinks. We didn't have any of that. I remember also breaking apart like Hershey bars so I could get at least chocolate in there and get something that tastes good.
Well, that was good because I was closed. You can't talk like this. You can't.
I know.
So that was something that I was ready to get out of that situation of things happening. But all along, I like lupus. I knew I didn't want to be like this. This wasn't me. I wasn't going to be held down. I was scared that this person may come back because we didn't know it. And during the process of recuperating, I felt so closed in, and my parents were like this, hugging me the whole time. It was hard for me to breathe. They stood outside the door when I went to the bathroom. You know, it was like they were so afraid that something would happen. And with my mouth wired shut, I had a necklace that had a nail tweezers on it. Because if I were to aspirate or something happened, they had to open my mouth in order for me to so I didn't choke.
Choke, right?
So my sister was responsible part of the time at night. She didn't sleep well. She sat in the twin beds. But I found that I was in a spot where I wasn't good. I was depressed. I was lonely. I was mad. I was hurting. I didn't want to leave FSU, and I didn't want to leave Florida State or the sorority house. It wasn't right. You know, I got attacked and I was moved to Miami, and everyone else was dealing with it at the sorority house together. So in my mind, I had this black, ugly mass behind me, and it felt like it was just going to cover me like a cloak. And I wanted that to go away so bad. And I looked out in the distance. In the far distance, I saw a little island on this big ocean. And it had one palm tree and one sand chair on that island. And it was so far, I had to squint to see it. But I wanted to get there. And all I could do was take baby steps to get there. It took me a long time. It took me weeks to get to that island. And I walked baby steps. And I'd look behind me, and this black mass was baby steps behind me. So when I finally reached my island, and I sat down in that chair, and I put my toes in the sand, I looked up, and it was sunny. I didn't have this behind me anymore, and I wasn't going to let it come back. I had walked away from it, and that was the end of that part of what I had to deal with.
That's some story. And that's, you know what? It's the mindset, it's determination, because you could have very easily just got swept up in this and just fall deep into a hole of depression and nightmares, you know, and all that. And you didn't. You just said, nope, not doing it. You're not letting, you know, and you hear this from victims a lot, that as much hurt as you were, as banged up as you weren't going to let him win. He might have won a fight, but he's not going to win your life.
Very good. Yeah, I agree. So I'm still recuperating in Miami, and people say, "Oh, aren't you afraid of men that are going to come and attack you and knock you down in the street?" No, no, maybe I should be. So after my mouth was unwired and I could eat again, it was 3 months after the attack, I went to work in a lumber yard because I figured where's the most men I could see in the shortest amount of time that I could get over this. And I worked there a couple weeks. And I didn't need to work there anymore. I wasn't afraid when someone walked through the door. But I did learn that there's a lot of cute construction workers and that they like coming to the lumber yards. So that was my other hurdle. So no, I'm not afraid of men.
Hey, wow. Hey, you talk about, like, I'll do my own rehab, everybody. I know exactly what to do. I know how to do it. I know where I'm going. I'm good. I don't need a doctor. I don't need PT. Nope, I'm good. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I just walk my life through it. That's what I do. I don't look back. I'm not bitter. You know, I feel bad for all the women and for Lisa and for Margaret and for them being taken away from the world so soon. And all the women that Ted Bundy had killed over the years. And I mention it in my book, A Light in the Dark, Surviving More Than Ted Bundy. My co-author and I wrote about 32 women that we knew were victims of Ted Bundy. And we gave them a name and a face and what their dreams were and what they were doing. Because each woman was a person. And if you look at a book on Ted Bundy now in the store, you open it up and there's a paragraph. And it has everyone's name with a comma, all 32 of us with a comma. And it hurt me so many years that happened. And women were just commas. And the life. So I did dedicate a part of my book to them so that I'm living my life and I wanted people to know what their lives were about.
Wow, what an honor and what a tribute that you did with that. And I want to talk about your book more as we go. So Ted Bundy gets arrested. They got him. The list of names, that are out there that, when he's arrested, the numbers of victims that you have to realize you came an inch from just being another victim, and you didn't. But you become a very big part of that prosecution. So take us through, again, he's locked up, you got him. Now the trial starts and you become a witness and you have to testify.
Yes. He was in the prison in Tallahassee, and Sheriff Ken Casares was the sheriff at that point, and he was so certain he wasn't going to let Bundy go. And after 40 years, I did get a chance to meet Ken Casares again. But when the trial was getting ready to start, I was subpoenaed in the deposition. And I went to Tallahassee and was led into this big conference room. And at the middle of the room was a big long conference table. And on one side were the prosecution, on the other side were the defense. And I walked in, I sat down, and I looked up, and Ted Bundy was at the other end of the table. And I looked at him. I didn't know what to think. I stared at him. I don't remember what the questions were that the defense and the prosecution were asking. And I was answering them, but all I did was stare him down. And he sat there, and he was so smug looking, his hand in his chin. And he was just like, come on, let's get over this, wasting my time and that kind of thought. And I saw his eyes, and they were just black. To me, they were just holes. And after the deposition, I got up and I went outside with my parents, and we went back home to Miami. And then he was taken back to prison. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared at that point. I was just mad. I guess my feelings were coming out of being mad and hurtful. So the next time I saw Ted Bundy was during the grand jury. And I was taken into the room, and he was sitting at a table. And he was really like pissed off and trying to joke and being, funny and everything. But you could tell he was just like over it. So after the grand jury, I was back in Miami. And then they set the trial for 1979 in June. It was my turn that I would have to testify. I lived in Miami, and that morning, the trial was in Miami. And I woke up that morning and had breakfast and got the prettiest red dress I could find and my white sandals, because I was going to testify against Ted Bundy. So I went to the courthouse and waited my turn, and I was taken into the courtroom. And as I did, I walked through the galley and saw everyone sitting there. And I looked, and I saw the jurors all sitting. And then I looked, and there was Ted Bundy at the defense table. And there was the prosecution. And I walked up to the desk, and I sat next to the judge in the witness box. And they swore me in. And I sat down, and I had to tell my story in front of all these people that I didn't know, that were waiting to hear everything I had to say. And I was embarrassed more than scared, because I had to tell the story again. Not that I was scared to say it. It was just like, okay, let's get this over with. And I looked at Ted Bundy sitting there, and I stared at him again. And he was trying to be fun and comical and making jokes and stuff. And I looked at him dead on, and I wanted to kill him at that point. But one of the questions that the defense asked me, is this the man you saw standing at the side of your bed that night that you were allegedly attacked? And I almost started crying, because I couldn't tell if it was him. I never had a clear eyeball or eyes on him. And I so wanted to help convict him. And I looked at the defense and I said, I don't know. I don't know if this is the man that attacked. And I was sad then because I felt like I wasn't helping convict him. So I left the courtroom, went out in the hallway, and about threw up because all these emotions were getting to me now. So Mama, Daddy, and I went back to Miami. I went back to our house.
See, you know what though? Here's what you did, and here's the testament to you. As hard as it was, you told your story, but then you told the truth. You know, that's the difference in the character that you are and the woman that you are and the strong victim that you are. You wanted to get him the right way. And if you veered off that road, it wouldn't have been the right way. And that's a big credit to you. You know, you told the truth, and that's big. And I'm sure the prosecution knew that, and we're happy that you told the truth, because then you get into a whole bad world of trying to cover it. So that you go home, and then what with the trial?
That was a trial, and that was something I'm glad that I went through it, and my part was over now. It was up to the jury and to the prosecution and what would happen to him then. And he was accused, found guilty, and sentenced to death. This was something I thought would happen pretty quickly, but as things go, it doesn't. It actually took 10 years for him to be in the court systems and in prison with Ken Casares as his sheriff, who was so cautious and careful with him that it took 2 guards to go to the door to his cell to open it. So there'd be 2 keys needed to open the cell. He was doing everything he could so that Bundy would not escape. And he was very proud of himself for doing that.
Good. And then he ends up getting executed almost on your anniversary date.
Yes.
10-day difference.
Yes.
In the attack on you and his death.
Yes. Over the 10 years, he was given several stays of execution. And I always cried. I cried for the women he killed, Margaret and Lisa. I was okay. I was living my life. And, they did. And it was very hurtful. And I would think whatever judge allowed him to get another stay, if they had a daughter, I wish he would let her go out with him, because I didn't see the good enough in him to say, okay, let's see if he needs an appeal. That just wasn't there, and I know everyone gets their due justice and everything, but that just didn't seem right.
And he did. He got everything that every criminal is afforded.
Yes.
He got a trial. He got convicted. He had his appeal process, and it ended. He got everything.
Yes.
That the criminal justice system is set up for. And in the end, hell has a new resident.
Yes.
That's
very
all.
Good. Yes. The day of the execution came, and it was about 12 midnight. And I got a call saying, this is it. He did not receive another stay. This is the day he's going to die. So I was in Boca Raton at this point. He's up in Tallahassee. And I get another phone call mid-morning around 3 and said that, he's had his last meal and he's being, talking to a minister and, things are moving ahead for the execution. And then around 6 o'clock in the morning, my husband and I are sitting downstairs on the sofa watching the news. And there were all these people for killing Bundy and those to not kill Bundy. And they were on picketers on each side of the street. And you could tell by their signs which ones were which, fry Bundy, fry, and, don't let him die on the other side. So it was something to watch. I had emotions going on, and watching that, it was just kind of a weird feeling for me. And I got a call from the penitentiary, and they said he was dead. They had killed him. and it was over. And I sat next to my husband, and I started crying. And I cried. I cried for all those victims that he took. And it was so unfair that they had to die, but it didn't feel good that it was dead. It just seemed like justice that he was dead. And I cried for Margaret and Lisa, and I just cried. And then after a while, I took a breath, looked at my husband, and said, "I'm hungry. Let's go to breakfast." That was my execution evening or morning.
You know, no one can put themselves in that situation of thinking about the person who did this, and then, like you said, thinking about the enormity of it. You know, your situation was one very small part, big in your mind, don't get me wrong,
No,
but in the enormity of the story of Ted Bundy, all of that raced into your head at one time. That is a tremendous undertaking to feel that way. And I still think you handled it with as much grace as you did. You could have done it a couple of different ways, and you didn't. You took it, you showed your emotions, it hit you, and then you went and ate breakfast, which is the way it should be.
very good. I even had a bagel and cream cheese, I remember.
Nothing better. Tell us about your book.
My book was, it took about 2.5 years to write. And my co-author is Emily Lucchese. She was great. She and I would meet or talk on the phone for about an hour and a half on Tuesdays. And we would go, and she would find a topic that she wanted to talk about, and we'd talk. And then she would go for the week and write it and then send it to me. And so we talk about each of the things. And I was actually robbed by gunpoint when I worked as a teller at a bank. So it was like, okay, that was one session. That was one thing to talk about. So we wrote the book, took about 2.5 weeks, and it was full of love and heartache and laughs. And like I said, I wanted to make it for those other women. I can tell my story, and I'm here to tell my story, but they aren't. So that was the big thing that I wanted to be part of the book. My son is 81. My son is 42 now, and we have 2 grandkids, and they live in South Florida. So it's great to see them and to have them in my life and to move on. So this was a good point in time for me to write the book. I tried to write it earlier. I wanted to do it myself, and I'd sit down and write chapters of something I remembered, but Mike was at a baseball game or playing football. And I wasn't. I was sitting there writing about my past. So I just put it down. I said, I don't want to miss out what's going on because I'm sitting there with a piece of pencil and a paper and, trying to figure out what's going on. So I stopped writing it. So when she contacted me, it was a good time. It was a good time to do it.
And I love the title. It's that room.
Yes.
That room and that light that saved your life. I love the title. It's so great. When is it coming out?
It is out. It came out last October 3rd.
Okay.
It's on Amazon now and in certain bookstores.
Fantastic. And we will blast that out all over the place. Kathy, I could literally sit here for probably 2 or 3 more hours and talk to you. When I say to you, and I truly mean this, the honor and privilege of talking to you is something I won't forget. This show. We can hear these over and over again, but it doesn't get easier. And your grace and just the way you are talking about it is something I'll treasure. So thank you, so much for your time, for your enduring power to just survive and do what you did. And thank you very, very much for everything today and what you're doing going forward.
Thank you for your detectives all over the country that are so important to people when they need them. When a victim is attacked and scared, that's what a police officer needs to do, is give them comfort. And the ones that helped me were tremendous. So I will always remember that.
That's great. And you know what, everyone who knows the show, Kathy, without even thinking about it, segued into our ending of our show when every week we tell everyone and ask everyone to say a prayer for our law enforcement officers, their families, our military veterans, because they do a job that most of the people in this country won't do. And they don't do it for money. They don't do it for fame. They do it because they do exactly what that one police officer did for Kathy. Be by your side, protect you and your families. So when you see them on the street, give them a wave, pat them on the back in the store, and if you have the opportunity, say thank you. It means the world to them. And our little selfless plug that we do now, remember our website, thegoldshieldshow.com, our video channel, youtube.com/@goldshields, and we are on every audio channel you can imagine. So make sure you sign up, you follow us, you subscribe to us so you don't miss this episode, which will be, like I said, part 2 of a 2-part series revolving around Ted Bundy. For this incredible woman, Kathy Kleiner Rubin, this is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. Everyone out there, stay safe, and we'll see everybody soon.